Hey everyone, and welcome back to the FishMarketAcademy, where we teach you how to fish for gains. So in today's video, we'll be going through the Mars protocol and its various phases. And I'm wearing this jacket today to protect myself from crypto winter. So let's get started. So Mars protocol brands themselves as the bank of the future. And as usual, nothing I say is financial advice. For those who are new to Terra ecosystem, these are the few ways that you can bridge into the Terra ecosystem, and I'll put these links down in the description below as well. So what is Mars protocol? Mars protocol is essentially an open source, transparent, and community governed bank of the future incubated by Delphi Labs and IDEO Colab Ventures. So unlike a traditional bank, Mars is a fully automated as well as an on-chain money market built on the Terra blockchain, and then lending out those tokens safely in a way that is non-custodial and over-collateralized, so it's very safe and we won't have like a bank run type of scenario because there'll be auto liquidations and all that. So how does it work? If you are familiar with Aave, the money market, it works pretty similarly to that in the sense that Mars will issue like collateralized debt, or also known as C2B. But what makes Mars unique and different from Aave is that they can also issue uncollateralized debt to whitelisted smart contracts, also known as C2C. So how this works is similar to like a bank in real life, where if you are a business with a business plan, you can go to the bank and then you present your business plan to them, and if they agree with what your business plan is about, they can actually lend you money in an uncollateralized way. So in Mars case, if you present the Mars console with a smart contract, which is basically like a business plan where it shows everything about what you're going to do with the money, and if the Mars console agrees, then they will also agree to lend you an uncollateralized debt as long as it's all following the smart contract, which should all be an automated process. So that's really cool. So Mars also uses a dynamic interest rate model, which means that the interest rate moves up and down according to demand and supply, allowing for optimal utilization as well as capital efficiency. And initially for the whitelisted smart contracts, it will be built by the Mars team, and it will mainly be revolving around leverage yield farming on Mirror and Nebula. But eventually they will open it up, and any smart contract can apply to receive a so-called credit line from Mars. So this is pretty interesting, and it's the first time I'm seeing an uncollateralized debt in a DeFi ecosystem. So for the participants in the Mars protocol, we have the lenders, which are the people that deposit the assets into Mars liquidity pool to earn interest. We have the borrowers, which are collateralized. So you borrow assets based on the deposited assets as collateral, and therefore borrowers have to also be lenders because you cannot borrow in an uncollateralized way. But there is also the uncollateralized borrowers, which are using smart contracts to borrow from Mars protocol so that they can do this in a way that don't require them to deposit assets. But like I said just now, the credit line has to be approved by the governance first before you can actually get the credit line, in order to ensure that risks are mitigated or ensure that risks are properly measured. Last but not least, we have the Mars Council, who can stake Mars to earn protocol fees and participate in governance, which also involves the approving of different credit lines based on smart contracts. So this is pretty interesting, and I would imagine there will be a lot of giga brains in the governance, approving stuff and all that. So here we have the stakeholder structure, and this is how Mars protocol basically works. We start off with the user who can deposit assets into the Mars money market, and then after that he can use his deposit as collateral to borrow in an over-collateralized way. Secondly, developers or gigabrain programmers can basically present smart contracts to the Mars money market, and then the Martian Council will basically govern and then underwrite the risk or approve the risk. If approved, then the smart contract will be able to do uncollateralized borrowing from the Mars money market. And of course, any type of borrowing, whether uncollateralized or collateralized, results in fees being generated and earned by the Martian Council, and the Mars holder who stake Mars in the Martian Council will receive the Mars rewards, and those that stake Mars will also receive it in the form of XMAS. Merry Xmas. So more about C2B borrowing, users will receive their tokens in the form of MA tokens. So let's say I deposit UST, I'll receive MA UST. If I deposit Luna, it will be MA Luna. And if they borrow against their collateral, as usual, like in Anchor protocol, there's an LTV ratio, and if it falls below the required maintenance margin or the LTV, you can get liquidated. So hopefully, with more borrowing platforms like Mars being available, Kujira has more opportunities to earn revenue from liquidation fees. So if you are a degen that likes to go with full maximum LTV ratio, do consider not doing that maybe, but also you can invest in Kujira. Not financial advice, of course. So here's another more detailed example. So the assumption is that the LTV is 50%, the maintenance margin is 55%, and we are in a bear market crypto winter where Luna is 16 UST again. So if I deposit 10,000 UST, I'll receive 10,000 MAUST, and that allows me to borrow up to 312.5 Luna, assuming the maintenance margin is at 55%. And because he borrowed Luna, if the price of Luna were to go up by just 10%, and that will increase his debt to 5.5k in nominal value, he will actually get liquidated. So you can either pay down your debt, or you can add more collateral to avoid getting liquidated. And if you are borrowing 312.5 Luna at 16 UST in order to sell Luna, you probably deserve to get liquidated. I'm kidding. So next up we have C2C borrowing, known as contract-to-contract borrowing, or also uncollateralized borrowing. So in traditional markets, they do offer low-interest collateralized loan to users, and because they are collateralized, you have to lock up your loan or your collateral, and that's capital inefficient, right? Because you require capital in order to do that. So Mars has essentially created uncollateralized borrowing with leverage yield farming, and they solve this by allowing non-depositor borrowers, which are essentially smart contracts, that are approved by the Martian Council. So this generates higher borrow demand as well as higher utilization rates, and therefore this generates higher yields for Mars stakers. So Mars will be the very first protocol in DeFi that I've seen to actually tap into this. So this uncollateralized credit line will be used within Mars to offer users access to leverage yield farming strategies that will be created by the Martian Council initially. If you know of any other protocol that has uncollateralized borrowing, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to check them out. So here's a more detailed example of uncollateralized borrowing. So the protocol will launch two simple strategies at first, just Mirror UST and Anchor UST. So this will allow users to do one-click auto-compounded farming with the option of leveraging UST on top, similar to kind of like a degen block strategy in some sense, but not entirely. So users will first deposit CW20 tokens into the Mirror USD strategy contract. Just to clarify, CW20 token is essentially Terra ecosystem token. It stands for Cosmosm 20, but that's a bit too technical. So with the CW20 token, it will also be paired with UST that will be provided by Mars Money Market, and they will basically LP the two tokens together and deposit into the Mirror staking contract, and you will receive Mirror rewards which you claim, and then you get the profit. So the Mars Council essentially created this contract, smart contract, which they already pre-approved, and will basically allow for UST to be borrowed for leverage automatically as part of the unique feature of the Mars lending protocol. So let's talk about liquidations, because that's going to be something that a lot of people face from time to time. So collateralized borrowing is very similar to Anchor protocol. So if you have used Anchor protocol and are familiar with the LTV and the liquidations and all that, it's essentially the same thing. But one thing that's different is that because Mars allows for leverage yield farming, when you get liquidated, liquidators can actually choose to receive either the liquidity token or just the underlying assets. So that's the main difference. Whereas for uncollateralized borrowing, the assets that are being liquidated can be liquidated portion by portion. So for example, for Mirror, right, a portion of the Mirror tokens can be claimed by liquidators who provide additional UST to pay off the remaining debt. And if you only pay off 50% of the remaining debt, you'll receive 50% of the Mirror tokens. Alright, let's move on to the dynamic interest rate, which is a bit more technical, which is something that's really interesting, and it's not something that even Aave has. So the problem with traditional markets is that the interest rate are not really optimized. So there's a utilization problem. So this is like how a traditional interest rate will look like. You can essentially see that it's a curve that's made out of two different slopes. So you have like your normal interest rate up to a certain point, and once it hits the optimal utilization, and then it exceeds that utilization, it suddenly jacks up quite a bit to disincentivize people from borrowing. So this is not very good, because then there's only one point of optimization, and this means that it cannot react quickly to external market conditions. We all know the crypto markets are highly volatile, and it's not very practical to only have one optimization point. So what Mars did is that they'll be looking at rates holistically. So for example, if one particular market, like for example the Anchor or borrow pool, is underutilized, they will decrease the interest rates to boost the demand for underutilized pools within the market. And vice versa, let's say for example Luna is overutilized, they will actually increase the interest rate to reduce the demand for that money market. And this is what they mean when they say that the interest rates will be able to adapt dynamically to market conditions in real time with the use of the control theory, which is that really complicated formula that I was describing earlier. Alright, let's move on to the utility of the MAS token. So essentially, MAS holders are going to be able to participate in governance, and they can stake their MAS and receive X MAS with a 2-week unstaking period. So 1 X MAS equals to 1 unit of voting power, and only X MAS holders can participate in governance. So X MAS holders will receive a share of the interest revenue, but in the beginning, because there's going to be very little volume or very little borrowing, this will be supplemented with MAS incentive rewards initially. X MAS holders will also ensure protocol risk with up to 30% of their stake being locked and sold in case of a shortfall event. So this is kind of like a built-in. In the event that there is some issue with the MAS protocol, X MAS holders will be the insurance provider. So this is kind of like a not so good thing, and if you are a provider of X MAS, you better hope the protocol has no issues. Otherwise, you could lose up to 30% of your locked stake. So what are some of the risks that I'm talking about? It's mainly the protocol risk in regards to the approval of smart contracts for uncollateralized credit. So similarly to a bank giving out uncollateralized loans, right? If they give it out to the bad business, which ends up making them lose the money in the form of bad debt, then the bank will need to basically be responsible for the loss. And in this case, it will be the X MAS holders. And this is the risk structure if you want to take a look. It's a bit technical, so you can pause this video if you want to find out and understand a bit better. And this is the fee structure. So basically the borrowers will pay interest payments to the depositors primarily, but 20% of it will go to the MAS Treasury, the MAS Insurance Fund, as well as the Martian Council. So it's only when the MAS Insurance Fund is fully depleted before they will actually go into the X MAS stakers and take from them. So MAS will be doing an airdrop, yay! And it will be airdropped to Luna stakers and B Luna holders, and they will receive a one-time distribution of 10 million MAS token, and the snapshot was taken at the start of this year in 1st Jan 2022. Airdrop recipients who decide not to deposit their MAS into the LBA will be able to claim their MAS tokens on 7th of March for up to 3 months. So if after 3 months and you haven't claimed, it's not going to disappear, but it will be sent to the Martian Council. So just remember to claim your MAS token in 3 months, which is plenty of time all the way to 7th of June. Hopefully the crypto winter will be over by then. So phase 1, the lock drop is similar to Astropod. You can lock up UST in exchange for MAS token, and then it will be claimable upon launch. And users will also receive MAS rewards the longer they lock their UST, and it's minimum of 3 months to 18 months. So the lock drop has already started and we are already at day 1, but this will carry on for 5 days, and after that there will be 2 days where you can have limited withdrawals and no deposit. So just to clarify again, on day 6 users will be able to withdraw up to 50% of the UST deposited, and on day 7 withdrawal allowance will fall linearly from 50% to 0%. If you deposit now, anytime from now to day 5, you can basically withdraw the full amount without any penalty. So these are the Lockdrop Boosts, and unlike Astropod where it's kind of not so worth locking for long periods of time, in MAS case it's actually more worth to lock for longer periods of time because your boost gets exponentially higher. So for 3 months you get 1x boost, and if you take that and multiply by 6 times, 18 months, you will expect a 6x boost, but they're actually giving you more than double of that at 14.7x. So the boosting for MAS is actually way better than the boosting for Astropod in terms of locking your tokens up. So after the phase 1 has passed, it's LBA time, the liquidity bootstrapping auction. So this is again similar to Astropod, and it will last from 28 February to 6 March. So similarly, like Astropod, users can commit their MAS from airdrop or lock drop to the pool during the first 3 days. And once they have deposited their MAS, this decision is irreversible. So please make sure that you only deposit any amount of MAS that you don't want to see for a while, because once you deposit, you cannot take it back out. On the other hand, for users that deposit UST, you can withdraw UST at any time from day 1 to 5. And no new deposits for UST can be accepted on day 6, and only limited withdrawals will be allowed from day 6 to 7. Oh, I just realized my camera is off. Users who deposited UST will claim the MAS UST LP tokens by the end of phase 2 with a 90 days linear vesting, and a total of 10 million MAS will be distributed, half to MAS participants and the other half to UST participants in proportion to their commitment. Just note that the pool participants will also be earning ongoing liquidity mining rewards, which is a nice bonus. So here's a recap of the timeline. Basically from now all the way to February 27 is phase 1. Just note that the last 2 days you cannot deposit and you can withdraw a limited amount. And for phase 2, which happens on the 28th of February, you have 3 days to deposit your Mars token and you have 5 days to deposit your UST. And when you deposit Mars, you cannot withdraw it, so just be careful. And on the 7th of March, the Mars protocol will launch. So let's explore the Mars tokenomics. So there will be 100 million Mars tokens in total, and the community will receive the large majority of it at 55%, so that's pretty good. And the Mars reserve, which is like the treasury, will be distributed at 10%, and the Mars team and advisors will be at 20%, and the investors will be at 10% with a 6 months cliff, with an initial airdrop of 5% to all the Luna B-Luna stakers. So in terms of tokenomics, I think this is pretty decent. There's a large percent to the community, and 20% for the team and advisors is pretty okay. And investors at 10% is also pretty okay. The airdrop amount is a little bit small, but we don't want too many people to be taking the airdrop and dumping it anyway. So let's just see how it goes. So the TG date will be on 7th of March, and the team cliff will be 6 months after, so 7th September. So just take note of this date in case you want to be wary of investors selling the unlock. So when Mars launch, they will first support UST, Anchor, Mirror, and Luna for lending and borrowing, but the protocol can actually support any CW20 or native Terra asset. So it will be really good to be able to borrow a lot of these Terra altcoins. So the community will be able to propose future asset listing based on individual risk parameters, and the Mars Council will be making the decisions. And the Mars Council will have to take responsibility and bear any consequence if any of their approvals or decisions are detrimental to the ecosystem or the token price. Of course, on the other hand, they will benefit if the impact of their decisions are positive. So for the first 100 days, this is the speculative circulation, and you can see the vast majority goes to community, which is good, assuming the community don't just farm and dump. Please don't farm and dump. Because there is Mars incentive reward, I would imagine that any money market with an incentive program will attract a lot of whales into the ecosystem, and we can foresee a lot of Terra alts to go up in price hopefully, and Luna token should benefit from this whole incentive program. So I wanted to do a quick demonstration for you guys to see, but the server is currently down, so hopefully it will be up soon and you guys can participate. It's pretty straightforward. I'll put a link in the description below on where to go, and you just have to click on deposit and you are basically done. So in conclusion, Mars is a capital efficient lending protocol that allows you to lend out your money and earn interest, and it is a first of a kind in terms of being able to do uncollateralized borrowing, which is really unique and I think will allow Terra ecosystem to be one notch higher than others, because there's a lot of innovation that's happening in the Terra ecosystem. So Mars protocol is the first true money market on the Terra ecosystem, and I think the Terra ecosystem is still pretty small in terms of the lending platform or lending landscape, so we could see this as an opportunity to skyrocket Terra's TVL even further once Mars protocol goes live. Ultimately, do your own research and invest with caution. And do remember to like and subscribe if you found this video useful. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!
Baby fish do 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 do, baby fish do 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 do, baby fish do 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 do.